Chapter 10 of the Alps, the Danube, and the Near East. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Betty B. In Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia. The name sounds like Ultima Thule, and it seems to indicate the jumping-off place of creation. Czecho might be a pet name for a monkey, and to many the word Slovak is synonymous with Dago. In the minds of millions of Americans, the country has no identity, and I doubt if 1 man out of 10 on the street can place it. Still, it contains 5 times as many people as Denmark, 7 times as many as Norway, and 10 or more times the number in Turkey. It is in the busiest and best part of Europe, and though still so young, has already taken its place in the finance, the business, and the politics of this side of the world. Most of the other republics that resulted from the Treaty of Versailles are largely farming propositions. Czechoslovakia is an industrial entity with factories ready to turn out goods, not only for the nation, but for the other peoples of Europe, for South America, and even for us. I came across the Atlantic with a representative of the biggest of the Chicago mail-order houses. He was on his way to Europe to buy stocks for his firm, and one of the most important countries on his list was this. Czechoslovakia will sell him glassware and notions, laces and embroideries, linens and other textiles, necklaces, brooches, and many of the novelties that our women will skimp their house money to buy. Czechoslovakia is long and narrow and lies like a fat sausage in the great sandwich of Central Europe. It is between Germany and Poland on the north, and Austria, Hungary, and Romania on the south. One end is in the Carpathian Mountains on the edge of Romania, and the other is about 600 miles away, right in the heart of industrial Germany. Turn it on the map of Europe and it would reach from Milan to London. Drop it down on the United States and it would extend from New York to Detroit. From north to south, its boundaries at the widest are not as far apart as New York and Baltimore, and in some places the country is not wider than the distance between Baltimore and Washington. Yet Czechoslovakia has an area almost 7 times that of Massachusetts. This stretch of land is composed of 3 provinces, or states. At the west is Bohemia, a rich plain almost surrounded by mountains. It is peppered with factories, and practically every inch of it is intensively cultivated. It is half the size of Ohio and has a population equal to that of Greater New York. In the east is Slovakia, nearly as large. Much of it lies in the high Carpathians, which have scenery as beautiful as that of Switzerland or the Austrian Tyrol. A land of farms, it is also exceedingly rich in natural resources. Its people number more than 3 times those of Detroit. Between these 2 states lies Moravia, which partakes somewhat of the character of each of the others. It is as big as Massachusetts, and its population approximates that of Chicago. From the standpoint of future development, Czechoslovakia as a whole is one of the best lands of Europe. It has a fertile soil, and its farmers are proportionately greater in number than those of any other European country except France or Russia. 4/5 of the mines of the old empire of Austria-Hungary are within its borders. It has soft and hard coal, producing more than 30 million tons in a year, while it mines annually 2 million tons of iron ore and has oil wells yield 10,000 tons of petroleum. It has gold, silver, copper, tin, opals, and garnets. In Bohemia is a radium mine, which until the recent discoveries in the Belgian Congo was one of the richest in the world. Its annual output is 2 grams, an amount which I believe may be somewhere near the size of a small pea. The land is one of the best wooded of Europe. Of every 3 acres, 1 is covered with trees, and the annual timber cut amounts to more than enough to make a boardwalk an inch thick and 5 feet wide from Prague to the moon. The country has nearly 14 million inhabitants, or about twice as many as Holland or Belgium, and 1/3 as many as Italy or France. It has more than double the number of people left in Austria. The Czechs, the Moravians, and the Slovaks make up the bulk of the population. They belong to the same race as the Russians. Besides the 10 million Slavs, there are something like 3 million Germans. Many of the German-speaking people are, however, of Slavic origin and are classed as Germans only because of their language and their associations with Germany in the past. In time, it is believed that all will be firmly welded together into one nation. 4 out of every 10 of the people of Czechoslovakia live on farms or in small villages, but there are several large cities and many small industrial centers. Prague, where I am writing, compares in population with Baltimore, St. Louis, or Boston. It is the capital and chief business center. Brünn, the industrial capital of Moravia, is about the size of Birmingham or Atlanta, and Bratislava on the Danube, the biggest town in Slovakia, has nearly 100,000 people. Pilsen, Bohemia, where there is a big steel mill and where some of the best beer of Europe is made, is about the same size. Czechoslovakia is a land of rivers. The Danube forms part of its southern boundary, giving access to the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. Prague is situated on the Moldau, which flows into the Elbe and thence out to the ocean, so that the city has water communications all the way to the North Sea. The Elbe also cuts through Bohemia, and it is now proposed to make a canal from it to the Danube, and one from the Oder to the Danube as well. The Elbe-Danube Canal has already been started and will probably be completed within a decade. By a series of locks, it will cross the divide between the North and Black Seas on the Bohemian-Moravian frontier at an altitude of 1,000 feet. The Czechs have an outlet to the sea at Hamburg, where they were given the use of certain wharves by the Versailles Treaty. They have also wharf rights at Stettin on the Baltic at the mouth of the Oder and wharves at Trieste at the head of the Adriatic, so that, although their republic is in the interior, they have access to 3 of the important seaports of Europe. Every part of the republic can be reached by railway. The stations are of stone, and the one in Prague named after President Wilson would be a credit to any American city. Train accommodations are as comfortable as in any part of Europe. I traveled first class and with my secretary had a compartment at less than half the cost of the same thing in Switzerland. We paid 7 or 8 cents a mile. The second class fares are about 3 or 4 cents and the third about 2 cents. Although there was no dining car, there were plenty of chances to eat at the station buffets. On the train journey to Prague, I had a good chance to see something of the industries of Bohemia. We rode 4 or 5 hours through a beehive of workshops. Every town had its factories of one kind or another, and the country was a crazy quilt of rich farms. The Bohemian Basin is well watered, and its farms are better than those of any area of the same size in the United States. The farm buildings are substantial and larger and more costly than ours. I saw hundreds of huge barns of stone or brick covered with stucco and roofed with red tiles. The houses of the owners are commodious, and the farmstead often consists of a dozen or so large buildings, some of which are given up to the laborers. All were well painted and in excellent repair. At one station we stopped several hours, and I took a car and rode through the country. Everyone I met seemed happy and enthusiastic, and all spoke proudly of the Republic. The people are still rejoicing in their freedom from Germany and Austria. The methods of cultivation are old-fashioned, and women and cattle furnish a large part of the labor. The oxen draw the plows and carts, while the women hoe and weed and help in the harvesting. I saw several swinging scythes. They also draw carts, and some of them carry great cornucopia baskets slung to their backs and so heavily loaded as to bend them double. The men and the women work in gangs in the fields. Often I saw one man bossing a gang of 20 women. I photographed some girls digging potatoes. They were clad in blue cotton with handkerchiefs wrapped around their heads, and some of them were good looking. They laughed as I snapped the camera. The oxen were fine, burly animals which pulled by their heads instead of their shoulders, as with us. A strap is fastened across the forehead just under the horns and hitched to tugs on the plow. They draw loads in the same way in this region, but I am told yokes are used farther east. I like Prague. Although the white hair of the Middle Ages still hangs on its shoulders, it is full of enterprise and business. Its peoples seem prosperous and the stores are large and full of fine goods. The city has now in the neighborhood of 700,000 population and is creeping out into the country. There is a necklace of smokestacks about the old town and many new factories are going up in the suburbs. The streets are wide and paved with Belgian blocks. The sidewalks in the chief business section are of black and white mosaic set in patterns, the stones being about an inch square. In front of my hotel there is a mosaic pavement at least 20 feet wide, laid in the form of a checkerboard of black and white blocks. The arcades here remind me of those in Bern. They are 20 or 30 feet wide and walled with stores often 50 feet or more in height. There seem to be plenty of banks and not a few of them have Czech American clerks. I cashed my letter of credit today at a bank where the manager was from Pittsburgh. He tells me he can make more money here than in America and that this is the belief of many of the Czechs who have returned from our country. The manager says he is introducing American methods and quick service instead of making the depositor sit down and wait upon the leisure of the clerks like so many barber shop customers. I have been motoring today from one government building to another. It took us generations to build our capital and put up our other great government structures. Czechoslovakia had only to reach out her hands and take what she wanted, for the Austrians left her all of the buildings she needed. The mighty castle erected by the kings of Bohemia on the great bluff overhanging the Moldau River is now a home for the president and also contains offices for the various departments. This castle is known as the Hradschin. It covers several hundred acres and is a veritable labyrinth of immense buildings surrounding courts with tunnel-like passages from one structure to another. It is antiquated and badly arranged for offices, but it accommodates thousands of clerks and most of the government activities. In the center of this maze is the famous Cathedral of St. Vitus, which was begun in 1344, almost 600 years ago, and a small portion of which is still uncompleted. The church is dedicated to St. Vitus, who is said to have come here from Rome about 300 years after Christ to bring the people salvation. St. Vitus was not only an evangelist, but a physician besides. He had also that faith which can move mountains and charity as well. He performed many miracles, including the cure of nervous diseases. It is said that when the Emperor Diocletian called him in to cast a devil out of one of the princes, St. Vitus restored the patient in mind and body. Then the emperor urged the saint to give up Christianity, but he refused. Upon being thrust into prison, he was seen night after night dancing with the angels to celestial music, and from that time on he became the patron of dancers, as well as of all those with nervous affections. Later, Diocletian sentenced St. Vitus to be put into a kettle of boiling lead, but he came out with no more hurt than was sustained by Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they were bound in their hose, their tunics, and their mantles, and thrown into the fiery furnace by Nebuchadnezzar. The Bible says not a hair of these three saints was singed, and the fire had no effect upon their bodies. It was the same with St. Vitus. The molten lead harmed not a bit of his flesh, nor a thread of his garments. After that the saint came to Bohemia and did the work commemorated by the Prague Cathedral. He finally returned to Rome, where, because of his religion, he was, like Daniel, cast into a den of lions, but the animals licked his feet. Just one more story of the cathedral. It relates to Sophia, the pious and beautiful daughter of an early king of Bohemia, whose hand was asked in marriage by a Bavarian monarch. Sophia rejected him because he was a pagan and scoffed at Christianity. Her royal father, however, insisted for political reasons on the marriage, whereupon she prayed to the Virgin to destroy her beauty so that she might not attract the passions of wicked men. When she awoke the next morning, she was cross-eyed and snub-nosed, and her face was covered with whiskers, and such luxuriant whiskers. In the painting of the Lady, to be seen in one of the chapels of the cathedral, they are shown falling halfway to her waist, and they reminded me of the ancient limerick. There was an old man with a beard, who said, "It is just as I feared. 2 owls and a hen, 4 larks and a wren, have all built their nests in my beard." The pagan lover took one look and abandoned his suit. Thereafter Sophia was plagued no more by proposals. Prague is full of stories like this. It has labyrinthine monasteries dating back to the Middle Ages, and spires and domes that have pierced the heavens for 700 years. The best view of the city is from the top of a tower in the grounds of the great Schönborn Palace, which serves as the American legation. It is right under the Hradschin, and in its 7 rolling acres of beautiful gardens is a stone tower overlooking the Moldau and the surrounding country. It was built, I doubt not, before the United States existed. I climbed the hill and the stone stairs to the top of the tower. At my back was the enormous castle, as well as the palaces that have been bought by the British, French, and Japanese for their diplomatic headquarters, while in front, across the winding Moldau, lay the quaint, many-towered, red-roofed city of Prague. Below was the Charles Bridge, one of 7 spanning the river. The bridge is decorated with 28 stone and bronze images of saints, including one of St. John of Nepomuk, who vanquished devils and converted 8,000 Saracens and 2,500 Jews to the Christian faith. He is the patron saint of Bohemia. Nearby is a marble slab marking the spot where he was thrown from the bridge into the water. As the body floated away, 5 miraculous stars appeared and hovered over it until it was brought to the shore. Good Catholics, as they pass over the bridge, put their hands on the slab and then kiss their fingers. End of chapter 10.